Yeah, we're recording now.
Oh, perfect.
So,
I was going to say, no, we can just keep talking about the beard shit, too.
Yeah, no, I'm all about it. No, believe me, if you get me talking about the beard shit, we will be here all night.
Hey, Brad.
How's it going, man? How's it going, dude?
It's going, dude.
So welcome back, everybody. We are finally getting this puppy off the fucking ground again.
I'm putting it back down because dogs don't like to be held that long.
Yeah, that's true. They don't. Otherwise, they might bite, and getting bitten by a Shih Tzu really fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So I am your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Alex.
And welcome back to another episode of The Purpose-Driven Dude, the podcast focusing on dudism, proudly the slowest growing religion in the United States.
Or the world, even.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, probably.
We're up to, Jesus Christ, how many of us are there now? There's actually like a good, thousands of us at this point, but
somewhere like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're all on Facebook. You guys can figure it out.
we're loosely affiliated.
Well, that's the understatement of the podcast. So, in this podcast, we will be discussing various tenets of our religion, dudism. Mm-hmm. Which is based on the film The Big Lebowski by the Coen brothers, mm-hmm. and also loosely on Taoism, and really just any other, kind of inoffensive philosophy you damn well please.
Yeah. I mean, I think its biggest parallels to Taoism. There's some aspects I would say probably of Zen Buddhism.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, Taoism kind of there's parallels between traditional Taoism and Zen Buddhism anyway.
Absolutely, I agree. So. And you can also apply things like Roman Stoicism. You could also apply things like American Transcendentalism, or
Winnie the Poohism.
The good Christianity.
The unadulterated first draft.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus, one of the great dudes of history.
Yeah, we'll be doubling around on old JC at some point, I'm sure.
We'll get around to him. He's not first on the list, but we will get to him. Rest assured, dear listeners.
I mean, don't worry. If we don't manage to offend you within the first few episodes, we'll eventually get to whatever will offend you.
If we don't manage to offend you within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I guess it's a good point to mention, because we've already probably cussed a few times. This podcast isn't really maybe for children. I mean, depends on your kid, I guess, but
definitely going to be an R-rated podcast.
Yeah, because we swear freely, baby.
Mostly for language, not so much. I guess there won't be so much sex and nudity, seeing as how you can't really see us. But
I mean, I'm buck naked now.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't know what I was getting myself into before this podcast started, and now I'm sitting across from this, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, look, you gotta be comfortable when you record podcasts. I mean, that's just how it goes.
That's true. I opt for a t-shirt.
Hey, teach their own. Well, no, and that's the thing. We're going to be swearing and all that good stuff. I guess if your kid is particularly impressionable, maybe they should listen to it. But I mean, look, we're going to be approaching things from a particular point of view. I think it's fair to say we're probably going to try to be even-handed with our approach to things.
Oh yeah, it's I'm not going to try to be overtly offensive unless, I guess I really fucking feel like it. But that's not really my purpose going into this project, and I think the same could be said for you. This is definitely not going to be a super hard-hitting podcast. No. We just want to spread the good word and hopefully bring some happiness to people out there. God knows that this goddamn human comedy that we live in is weird enough as it is, and depressing enough as it is, and we feel like we can bring a little light into this world.
That's our hope, and it's important to note, too, this is not an attempt to proselytize. This religion that we adhere to is specifically one that does not proselytize. So,
we are the least evangelical religious folk you will ever ever meet.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and I'd like to just underscore that one because, we have no intention of trying to convert people or anything like that. If you dig what we're laying down, then that's cool. If you don't, then that's cool too. Tell your friends, tell your enemies kind of deal. I mean, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, just given that, and given that we've kind of explained what dudism is and what our mission is, we're going to be trying a few things on this podcast moving forward. A couple of different segments, and once we get our social media up and running, we'll let you know, and you can kind of let us know what you think about these particular segments. But I think it's time to go ahead and kick us off. We have a segment, the name of which I have forgotten.
In truly dudist fashion, it's like it's coming to me.
No,
it's down there somewhere. Let me take another look.
It is down there somewhere. It's literally like I'm scrolling through the document right now.
I mean, I got it queued if you'd rather.
It's notably doodly. That's what it was. Welcome, folks, to the first edition of Notably Doodly. And Alex, if you want to take us away, let us know what it is that we can expect in this segment. And you have actually got this one covered here.
Yeah, so we thought a good way to kick off the podcast moving forward is to do a segment called Particularly Doodly, where we look at a particular person in recent events or something recent from maybe like the news or something. Take a look at somebody who has in some way exemplified doodly behavior, or an aspect of Taoism or something like that. Someone who's doing right by the world, who's taking it easy for all us sinners, all that good stuff.
Excellent.
So, to kick us off, I thought who better than a man named John Perry Barlow. Some of you may know the name. He was one of the original lyricists for the Grateful Dead.
Of course.
To kick us off exactly where you probably expected us to kick off. He, most people who, I'm going to guess probably who are listening to this podcast will know him as a lyricist from the Grateful Dead. He worked with Bob Weir, one of the founding members of the Grateful Dead, to write some of their biggest hits, actually. Cassidy, Mexicali Blues, Looks Like Rain. If you are into the Grateful Dead, you've probably heard a song written
by
this guy.
I've heard a couple of those.
Yeah, man. And so that's the thing. Like, he's well known in that area. But he is also well known in a number of kind of techie circles. He was a co-founder of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or the EFF. And that's an organization that has lobbied and written white papers and stuff like that for things like net neutrality and keeping the internet free and open for all of us. So
excellent, because fuck that whole situation that we find ourselves in these days.
Yeah, it's a little bit tenuous, to say the least.
To say the absolute least. That's fucking rad. I had no idea that he was involved in projects that recently.
Yeah, and he started the EFF a couple decades ago, when the internet was still kind of in its infancy. John Perry Barlow, though, was in the news this last week because sadly he did pass away. He passed away at the age of
sucks.
Yeah, passed away at the age of 70. I found a nice little write-up on him on NPR. A couple interesting points that I think are worth pointing out, and that kind of tie him to the whole dudism of it all. So, of course, we mentioned he was a champion of free speech, and he was also a pretty big proponent of this idea of like the connective power of the internet, something that's able to bring people together for the common good. Some of his ideas nowadays sound almost maybe a little bit idealistic. What would you expect from someone who was a lyricist or the Grateful Dead, I guess?
Yeah, I was about to say that tracks.
Yeah.
Color me shocked.
But a fun little fact I found, so he wrote a couple of interesting things. The thing they mentioned in the article is he wrote something called the Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace. Which they didn't go too far into in the article. But I think what's really interesting about this, it was written in 1996, and he presented this paper at the World Economic Forum in Davos that year.
Holy shit.
And I can only just sort of like draw this mental image in my brain of one of like the founding lyricists of the Grateful Dead at fucking Davos in Switzerland, surrounded by like the fucking Bond villains of the world, essentially.
Yeah.
Getting up and basically giving them all the finger with this like speech on the independence of cyberspace.
Giving the finger to the status quo. That's it doesn't get more doodly than that.
It's pretty damn doodly. And I that mental image is like just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my own head. So anyway, yeah, and so he did a lot of other work. He also probably most notably wrote a thing called The Principles of Adult Behavior, which is something that is still...
I recognize that. Fuck me if I remember where I know that from.
Well, it's this sort of it's about 25. It's a 25-point kind of list of basically ideals to hold oneself to.
Okay.
It makes its way around the internet quite a bit. You can find it on Reddit. There's people who kind of try to adhere to this in an internet sense of things, kind of like an online sense. And like, I mean, your points on this list couldn't really be any more doodly, I feel. Like, the very first one is just be patient, like, no matter what. So, you know, I mean, the guy was kind of right in that area of Dudism. One of the one I love, and I think it's one of the more specifically Taoist points, was number 7. It's tolerate ambiguity.
Huh.
And I think, like, from what I've read of the Tao Te Ching and my understanding of Taoism, this idea of like not holding to absolutes and allowing flexibility of thought is such a central tenet to it.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. Okay.
So I mean, and some of these too, it's like, you know, laugh at yourself frequently, or you know, praise at least as often as you disparage. I mean, they're kind of like great little points, just to you know, little guidance points, you know. So
about to say, so everybody, tenets for adult behavior. Let's get that one a bit more distributed out into the world, because fuck knows we need it.
Yeah, so, you know, John Perry Barlow, may he rest in peace. Sad to see you go, man, but... Everybody
raise a white Russian into the air for our man, John Perry Barlow.
Yeah.
And that is our particularly doodly dude of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, I thought it'd be a nice way to kick it off.
I was about to say, that's a great way to kick that segment off.
Seemed like a chill dude.
Exactly. So. Well, I guess now we'll be moving on into the main segment of our episode. How do you like that transition? Super fucking awkward.
Well, I mean, we'll get better as we go, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, look, no promises, guys.
I'm not going to promise anything at this point. So every week we're going to have a subject or something that we're going to cover that it pertains particularly to the philosophy of Dudism, or activities that activities that we use to keep our minds or our bodies limber in the service of the dude and all the good that he has brought into the world. And we decided this week that we are going to focus on a particular tenet of originally Taoism that really translates into Dudism. And that tenet is Wu Wei. Wu Wei being a philosophy originally adopted into Taoism, explained by Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, as being the concept of action through inaction, or being at one with the course of nature and allowing the natural world to take its course around you and not fighting against it.
Yeah, the Tao Te Ching covers this topic in about 10 chapters through and through. Would like to give a quick shout out to Taoistic.com for a little bit of guidance in identifying all the relevant chapters on this one.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And yeah, great resource if you guys are ever curious about Taoism or any kind of analysis on that. It kind of is a good breakdown.
Yeah, we can put a link to that down in the show notes.
Absolutely. And I took the liberty of bookmarking through my copy of the Dude De Ching, which is a Dudist version of the Tao Te Ching.
Our holy text. Thank you, Mr. Oliver Benjamin. There, I always try to reverse his name every single time.
Yeah.
No, Oliver Benjamin.
Yeah, and I gotta say, we're in no way endorsed by anything that he's done or written technically, but it is a very good breakdown. It's the second, actually I guess technically the third now version of the Tao Te Ching that I've read. It's definitely the most accessible, and it's fun too because it breaks it down into kind of a Dudist version as well as the original text.
Absolutely. So. In case you guys were confused by the concept of the Dude De Ching, yeah, it is in fact specifically the Dudist take on the Tao Te Ching. And is fantastic reading, even if you don't necessarily believe in our mission here. I do highly recommend that you check it out.
I mean, it is amusing to no end, I would say. And a good point, a good kind of lineup on that is that, I mean, okay, so Wu Wei is a concept that literally gets introduced in chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching, like right off the bat.
Indeed it does.
This is a central tenet. And I just want to read just briefly how these two parts differentiate through these two texts. So in the Tao Te Ching, the translation here, it says, "Therefore the sage acts without struggle or coercion and teaches by example and illusion rather than rote and rule. Things come and he welcomes them, things go and he bids them adieu." So it's that idea, right? Like things kind of come naturally, they leave naturally, and there's no real point in struggling against them. But the Dudist version is also very fun. It says, "So the stranger controls without authority and teaches without cuss words. He lets all things take her easy, watches the semifinals but does not interfere, drinks sarsaparilla without seeking something stronger, and takes comfort where he can."
Oh my God. So for anyone who might be confused by that of course referring to the character, the stranger, played by Sam Elliott in The Big Lebowski, who is a personal hero of mine.
Same, yeah.
And
he's a pretty chill
man that I desperately try to model some of my many of my attitudes after.
Pretty chill dude all around, I think it's safe to say. I think at one point I actually said that I thought Sam Elliott was my spirit animal. I may have been drunk or high or both at that time. But
well, you know what? I think he would commiserate with you in that particular instance.
Although he'd probably seek that good sarsaparilla first, I would assume.
I don't know. He seems to me like a man who would be down with the with that good green as well.
That's a fair point.
He's definitely been. The thing I kind of love about Sam Elliott is the fact that the older he's gotten, the more like stoner his characters have gotten.
I know. As much as I love him in The Big Lebowski, and I mean, like, it's probably one of the first things I ever saw him in. I think still one of my favorite things I've ever seen him do was his role in Parks and Rec. I mean, it's
absolutely
just the funniest damn thing.
Yeah, as Ron.
Yeah, the other Ron.
Done.
It's just the best.
Yeah, no. So, we'll probably end up doing an episode on Sam Elliott at some point in time.
I'd be all about that.
Yeah. So getting back towards the tenets of Wu Wei, I think the best way to really describe it is just go with the flow, man. Like don't stress yourself so much over what other people are doing around you and trying to force other people into your way of life or your way of thinking, and don't let other people force you into theirs.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, like, basic idea of it. I know the imagery that's used repeatedly throughout the Tao Te Ching is that of like a river, like flowing water in particular.
Yes.
The idea there is that, you know, a rock in the river isn't trying to stop the river. It allows the water to flow around it and eventually becomes part of that kind of greater whole of the river. And it's formed subtly by it, but the river is also subtly formed by its presence. And it's not the rock isn't asserting itself on anything. It's just there, man. It's just being. And I think it's a kind of
the rock abides.
The rock abides. And I think it's a good kind of just basic idea for living in as stress-free of a way as possible. Maybe it's a way to reduce, I think, unnecessary tension in your life. I know I've been able to use it to great effect that way personally. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you had an example that you'd spoken to me about in the past regarding some professional aspects. How's that going for you?
I mean, it's going fine. And look, I think that's sort of the thing. It's like you could, if you want, I'm not going to apply it directly to me personally, professionally, but if you want to apply it to a professional setting, right? Like if you have a job and you are looking to advance in the company or looking to do anything like that. I mean, what good does it do you to really be like badgering people about that? What good does it do to come in every day and like needle someone on that point, or to be constantly going to like your HR department and doing something when you can really just take a step back, like chill out and like eventually if you're working hard and you're doing your job right, good things will come to you. You just got to stay that course, basically, you know?
Great.
And I mean, really the other side of that is like, I mean, if you do push super hard, I mean, you could find yourself in kind of hot water at your job too. So.
That is true. It just doesn't make any sense to stress yourself out and stress other people out whenever the situation is either A, beyond your control, or B, is going to come about naturally. There's no point in rushing or forcing anything. And this has to do with interpersonal relationships. This can be applied to professional advancement or professional activities. This can just be applied to your fucking commute.
No fucking kidding, man. Okay, so a quick side note. Both of us live in Los Angeles, and I swear, like, applying this concept to driving on a congested freeway has saved me a lot of, like, consternation and road rage over the years.
Absolutely. Don't allow yourself to be distracted or frustrated or enraged, God forbid, by the actions of people around you, because not everybody's going to be, following that same path or following these same tenets. But the more that you're able to relax and just go with the flow of life and not allow these things to really stress you out or upset you, the happier you're going to be.
Yeah, and it's one sort of things, I mean, you kind of come to this realization, I mean, like, traffic is a great example, where, like, if some dude's riding your ass and tailgating you, or if, someone cuts you off, you getting angry or honking your horn or slamming on your brakes or anything like that, it's not going to help the situation. It's not going to resolve anything.
No.
And, look, I think it's important to note that Taoism in general and Buddhism as well is not so much about never getting angry or being able to like keep it all deep down or anything like that. I mean, you're going to get angry.
Yeah.
The dude gets angry throughout the movie frequently.
The dude gets very undude at times throughout our story.
Yeah, and that's fine. But I think the thing that being mindful of something like Wu Wei, the thing that's useful for that is that it can allow you to kind of find your center again, and hopefully more quickly.
And not dwell.
Not dwell
on these things that are causing you distress.
Exactly, and it's not to say too that like people shouldn't like necessarily like have like an overarching goal. Like if you have a professional goal or you have a personal goal, it's not saying that you can't have that or that you shouldn't like be working towards that. It's just I like to think of it too in terms of looking for things like the path of least resistance to something.
Yeah.
You know, what is going to get me from point A to point B with the fewest roadblocks in the way. And
absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And I mean, just going back to that tenet, it's interesting how universal a lot of these philosophies are, because as you were talking just now, it really, all of a sudden I started racking my brain trying to come up with a name, because I'm fucking terrible with names. But what it made me think of when you were talking about not allowing these things to weigh you down, is it took me to the writings of Marcus Aurelius and Roman Stoicism, where you don't allow yourself to be bogged down and dwell in these negative thoughts and negative feelings and the negative things around you, but you instead find those places to take joy in the world around you.
Right, and I mean it's another tenet of Taoism that I mean we'll probably touch on as we go through this adventure with everyone. But the idea of like kind of embracing dichotomies, you know, like something could be shitty, something could be like straight up shitty. Like you could, I mean, like I don't know, anything that you find unpleasant, right? But I don't know, some people would probably call it looking for a silver lining or something like that. But it's not so much looking for blind optimism. It's addressing the shitty thing, but maybe then twisting that turn and say like, well, what's shitty about it? Or why is it shitty? Or is it even shitty? You know? Like, you can kind of like pull a dichotomy.
What is shitty? Right,
what is shitty? I mean, and it's a very kind of like Taoist mindset, right? Like questioning absolutes. We've been talking about future topics, and I think we're going to probably be doing at least one episode on Star Wars coming up. But the idea that like thinking in terms of absolutes is pretty rigid overall, and Taoism, I think, more than anything, is about kind of a fluidity and a looseness of thinking.
Yeah, you know? It's a fluidity and looseness of living.
Yes, indeed. And I found another quote that kind of touches on that. This is from Tao Te Ching, chapter 29. Again, I bookmarked these things ahead of time because I'm a massive nerd. But
you're also a librarian.
I mean, look, this is all very true. And would you expect anything less at a certain point?
No, I'm not surprised by this. I'm just saying it tracks.
Well, yeah. But so at the end of chapter 29 of the Tao Te Ching, it says, "Therefore the sage is skeptical of extremes and opposed to evangelical ideals. When arrogance is avoided, achievements come naturally, easily, and each in their own time."
Yep.
So, and
people who are selling absolutes are selling bullshit.
Almost certainly. And just to keep it light, we'll do the dudist version of that text. It's the stranger has never seen the queen in her damned undies, but
forgot about that.
But he's seen something every bit as stupefying. What is a hero? This is our concern. So.
Oh my god! That was not the quote I was expecting to come out of that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that's kind of the main point is, just as best as possible, try to allow things to kind of take their own course, to run their own course, to
yeah.
And again, I think the analogy to like water is it's pervasive, to be sure. In the symbolism used or employed in the Tao Te Ching, but it's pretty apt overall.
Absolutely. I think it just really resonates with just about every tenet of philosophy that you could find within the Tao Te Ching, within Dudism, and I mean also with Zen Buddhism and a lot of other philosophical paths. And I mean it's really a universal tenet for better living. Absolutely.
I mean, it's I would say it's a kind of an underlying tenet of most major philosophies out there.
Yeah, all the good ones at least.
I mean, all the good ones. I mean, saying nothing of the tenets of National Socialism, but we don't need to dwell there.
Yeah, at least it was a philosophy.
At least it was an ethos, I think.
An ethos. I think at least it's an ethos. I think you're correct.
Fucking Nazis.
Fucking Nazis. And hey, speaking of, I mean, do you have anything else to add on this topic?
No. I think honestly, I think this is a good way to kind of dip our toe, as it were, into this. Every pun intended. But it's gonna be one of the sort of things that we will probably be coming back to as we go along, just because it's so central to pretty much everything we're probably gonna be talking about moving forward. So it seemed like a good place to start, and a springboard, if you will.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, this is Alex, your co-host for the Purpose Driven Dude. Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode on Wu Wei. Just popping in here to do a little bit of housekeeping. Just wanted to mention that we do have our social media up and running at this point. We mentioned later in the episode that we were going to get it going, and now it's going. So if you would like to email us, you can email us at pddcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter. That's at pddcast. And we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/pddcast. Love to hear from you guys. If you're listening, if you're you're new to the show, obviously, because it's our first episode. So hopefully you're enjoying it so far. And would like to also do a quick shout out to our music that we used for this podcast. That is from the band Apache Tomcat. The song is called 2 p.m. Wake Up Call. It's off of the album Classics by Request. I highly recommend checking them out. They have some really cool stuff, especially in the sort of surf rock area that you've been hearing with this particular recording. So check them out when you get the chance, and show them some love. Check out that album. And finally, I would just like to make a quick shout out here to our podcasting network. We are part of Unit 24 Productions. We have a couple of different shows on the network currently up and running. Shows such as Get Off My Lawn, which is hosted by Brad and our friend Kyle, in which they explore topics that are usually more of interest to slightly older men, but that they also find enjoyable. Topics such as war movies and smoking pipe tobacco. We also have a show called Good Libations, in which Brad and his partner discuss alcohol and alcohol-related topics, a topic near and dear to all of our hearts and our livers and our kidneys, of course. And finally, Your Fave is Problematic, in which Liz and our friend Kristen kind of take a critical look at our favorite things in pop culture and politics and just about anything else. So check them out. You can find them all over social media as well. So that pretty much does it for our housekeeping here. Thanks again for joining us for episode 1. All of our early episodes here should be going up at once, so episodes at least 2 and 3 should be already ready for you if you'd like to keep listening. And we definitely appreciate having you here. So without any further ado, we will get back to the episode, and I'll probably talk to you guys soon for a little more housekeeping in the next episode. All right, we'll keep it cool, dudes.
And so the reason I started to make that segue is it provided me with a good opportunity to introduce another segment into the Purpose Driven Dude.
Yes, our third act.
Our third act, if you will. I don't know, I guess our denouement.
Look, like I said, we both live in LA, and what kind of podcast would we be if we didn't have a 3-act structure?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Exactly. Thank you for that liberal arts degree that I got. So the next segment that I want to introduce is something that we're going to be trying to do on pretty much an episode by episode basis, where we're going to be calling it Getting to the Dude of the Matter, where we take an event or a happening somewhere in the world, and we try to look at it through the lens of dudism. And this time, it kind of is going to bleed in a little bit into Notably Dudely, because this story that I found that just really stuck out with me focuses on the actions of a particular man. But I read this, and in a, honestly kind of shitty week, this one really stuck out to me as a great beacon of hope. And so I really want to talk to everybody tonight about the story of Mr. Joe Bednarsky Jr. So this is a man who
what is a man?
What is a man? This man. So he was actually from a very early age indoctrinated by the Ku Klux Klan. He had a troubled relationship with his family. He was taken in by a neighbor who was a member of the Klan from a very early age. Painted it as an organization that was serving their community through being the dick bags that they are.
So you can't serve your community unless you hide your face.
Unless you hide your face and alienate 50% of it. So the reason I want to talk to you about Joe Bednarsky Jr. is because this man rose to a level of prominence. I believe I read he was a imperial wizard in the KK. Yeah, no, I don't know what any of these things mean.
I don't know. Is it like Boy Scout, like second degree Scout, like fucking Eagle Scout, like Grand Wizard, like
something along those lines.
I don't know what the progression is.
Yeah, and
did he need to get so many like racist merit badges?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and the funny thing is, like, I just mock the KKK mercilessly because I'm like, yeah, of course you took all of your names from fucking D&D classes.
Fucking nerds.
Yeah, you goddamn nerds.
Racist nerds.
And
the worst kind of nerd.
The worst kind of nerd. The truly worst, the worst nerds in the world. And so this is a man who actually rose to a very prominent position within the Ku Klux Klan, went to jail,
as one
does when one assaults a woman of color, by shooting her with a slingshot. Because again, fucking nerds. Like, what is this? Like a fucking 1980s, like, kids movie? Like, what the fuck is?
I mean, I guess better than the lynching.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, better than setting a cross on fire in somebody's front yard. But,
low-level Klan activity.
Yeah. So the reason
still a crime, but
the real reason I wanted to talk about this man is because this man, after getting out of prison, came to an epiphany. Where he realized that he was redirecting a lot of hate that he felt for himself at other people. And in 2007, completely disbanded the chapter of the Klan that he was in charge of, and then started attending Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, and showed up on the doorstep of this church, which was acting as a soup kitchen at the time, and began a conversation with their reverend, who was a Reverend Charles E. Wilkins Sr. And a lot of people very nervous when this guy who is 6'6", 330 pounds, according to this article that I read about him, walks in with a KKK tattoo on his hand and sits down and starts trying to talk to people. But the reverend at this church began the dialogue with him, and they have now become best friends.
Wow.
And Bednarsky is now an alderman and a head of security for this church.
Specializing in slingshots, I'm sure.
Specializing in slingshots. I mean, it's a very Home Alone-esque defense system
right.
they've got going.
It's mostly a Rube Goldberg machine.
Mostly a Rube Goldberg machine armed with paint cans and irons.
Oh, Jesus.
But this man has now become a center of, or a beacon of love and acceptance within this community, and has now spoken on numerous platforms about how the acceptance he found within this Episcopal church led him to a complete and total reemergence as a human being who loves both himself and all those around him, and as he says, would literally take a bullet for the good reverend at this church. Became very good friends with the reverend's wife when she was unfortunately terminally ill, and was well known for sitting by her bed in the hospital. But this really stuck out to me. As a man who is now using his life to epitomize a lot of the tenets that we value in dudism. Someone who is going out into the world to spread that love and that joy, and also telling people that he once associated with to take it fucking easy, man. Like, there's no point in spreading hate, spreading violence around. It's just not a cool thing to do, and is now actually like I said, just a beacon of hope and love, and it led me to believe that, in this goddamn travesty of a direction that we have headed to or headed towards in this country, that seeing somebody like this makes me think, there is hope out there for people. And I wanted to kind of like wrap up my analysis with this. I was laughing when I read this story because Reverend Wilkins was quoted as saying, "Oh yeah, he was eating alone, and the first thing that stuck out is I'm thinking, oh God, what is this big white boy up to?" And he went over and started talking to him, and the actual quote in the article is, Wilkins had a backup plan in case Bednarsky hadn't fully shaken the hate. His quote was, "I guarantee I would have hit him with a chair before he got to me." So Reverend Wilkins, also a pretty cool dude.
And a practical man. I mean, hey.
And a very practical soul.
You can't blame him. I mean, but I mean, that's nice. I mean, and I think, it's something that I've had to do really over the last, year plus, really, because, I mean, you're talking about just the kind of overall direction of the country, and it can be chilling at times, to say the very least, and it's probably no surprise that both of us are fairly liberal in our leanings, but I think it's been important for me personally, and I think this is a great highlight of this, is that it's important to also look at kind of like the micro, not just the macro. Look at the individual stories, look at the things going on locally, things in your community. I mean, there's still a lot of good happening out there, and it's really easy to get kind of caught up into the negative, sort of 24-hour news cycle type stuff, but the counter to that is to kind of like look for the good stuff, and
exactly.
It does exist.
Look for the good people.
Look for the good people, and look for the people who are turning things around and doing good by themselves and others. Sounds like this guy went through a pretty big transformation,
Yeah, so, and if he can, anyone can.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, and it's one of the sort of things, like, he found this by way of Christianity, and more power to him, really. I mean, I think that's the thing to highlight here too, is that, we're not dogging on any one particular religion. If you find your way to a particularly good place by way of however you get there, I mean, good on you.
Yeah, seriously, good for you.
I mean, we operate in this in the dudist realm, I guess, of things, but it's not to say that these tenets can't cross into other spheres,
So Mr. Joe Bednarsky Jr. and the Reverend Wilkins, pretty good Christian dudes.
Seems pretty chill, man. I mean, it sounds like they've embraced the Bill and Ted of it all, man. Just be excellent to each other,
Oh man, ooh. Idea for another episode.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to cover Bill and Ted. I think that is a very fun time right there.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This is gonna be an interesting journey and an interesting road that we're going down here, and I certainly hope that you'll stay with us while we explore it.
Rambling as it may be.
Rambling as it may be.
Well, we'll get there eventually. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it's the journey, not the destination,
yeah,
right?
we'll stop and get some in and out on the way.
Yeah, not to fucking sound like one of those motivational like knit posters or whatever.
Yeah. So again, just thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be in the process of developing some more segments for the program, and also going to be developing some social media that I will let you guys know about just as soon as it is up and running. And with that, fuck it, dude.
Fuck it, dude.
Let's go bowling.
Yeah.